新しい春の始まりです。
見えない地図広げ行き先探そう本当の輝きがどこかで待ってる。
Cardcaptor Sakura is a visually stunning anime. Every episode had me in shock that what I was watching was not only a TV anime, but a TV anime that ran for 70 consecutive episodes, maintaining such a high quality of art and animation. And it makes sense. In April of 1998, NHK reported that Sakura was the biggest investment they'd ever placed in an in-house animation project. The series began airing on NHK's satellite station, but despite playing on satellite cable and in a time slot that normally didn't play anime, it became one of the most popular shows on the station. There's even a rumor floating around that at the time, many children in Japan were asking their families to subscribe to BS2, NHK's satellite station that hosted Sakura, claiming that they wanted it so that they could watch the World Cup, when in actuality, they wanted it to watch Sakura. While the series was popular with its intended audience of children, it also adopted a very strong otaku following, which is attributed to the inclusion of moe, lolicon, shotokan, and boy love elements. It's kind of a shame that the show has been ignored and maybe even a little stigmatized in the West. This is mostly due to the initial release being the heavily edited and localized version titled Cardcaptors, a localization that turned the show more into a standard kids show, marketing it more as a Pokemon clone and dubbed with the voices from Ed and Eddie. There is a more faithful dub created by Animax, and this is the version you'll find on Crunchyroll, Netflix, and even the official Blu-rays. I don't recommend this dub either. Like I said, this dub was produced by Animax in Hong Kong, and it was made to air in Asian markets. Because of this, the dub was produced on a low budget with a quick turnaround and featuring pretty spotty voice acting and translations.
Is your store opening up today?
Yes, my name's Maki Matsumoto. I'm the store manager. Nice to meet you.
I'm Sakura Kinomoto.
Sakura, is it?
Mispronouncing names in a dub usually doesn't bother me too much, but it gets really egregious in the Animax dub of Sakura, especially when they introduce a character who, in Japanese, is named Yue, but the dub calls him Yu. This becomes incredibly confusing when the Clo Cards tell Sakura that the final judgment depends on Yu, and it sounds like they're telling Sakura it depends on like a test of courage or personal fortitude, when in actuality, Yue is an angel who just wants to fuck her shit up. Also, the Animax dub notoriously cut a scene where Shaoran admits that he has a crush on Yukito. So if you're watching the dub, during the scene, this happens. Hi, this is John from a future recording. So basically what happens in this scene is that all of Sakura and Shaoran's dialogue is cut. There's no audio. But because of that, when I play the scene, you only hear the soundtrack, and that triggers YouTube's copyright. So that's the explanation. If you watch the scene dubbed on Netflix, the audio will just cut out. I thought this was cut because it was gay, and that just didn't fly on East Asian television, but it's weird because there's like plenty of other gay shit in the show that isn't cut. Like, all the Toya and Yukito stuff is left perfectly intact. That made me think it had to do with the characters' ages, since Shaoran is 10 and Yue is like 240. But then Sakura says she likes Yue, and all that shit's completely unedited. I also love how Yue tells Sakura that she shouldn't love him romantically, and that the love she feels for him is more like the love she feels towards her brother and father. And then he fucks her brother. I'm joking. Sakura is a wholesome Christian anime. In all seriousness though, like most other 12-year-old girls on the internet, I really did love all the scenes between Toya and Yukito. And I really felt the emotion in the scene between Chloride and Sakura, which, while undeniably incredibly corny, I felt like at least earned its corniness. A common criticism I hear leveraged at Sakura is that the series contains problematic relationships. Specifically, characters in love with characters who are much older than them, the most infamous being Rika and Mr. Terada. The Rika-Mr. Terada thing really didn't bother me though, but I also only watched the anime, which removed scenes in order to make their love come off as more of a one-sided crush. While I prefer the anime's portrayal because I think it's more realistic, realism isn't what Clamp was going for in Sakura's world. This is because we see everything from Sakura's point of view, and Sakura as a character is endlessly optimistic and non-judgmental. When Sakura finds out that Shaoran has a crush on Yukito, she views him as a romantic rival, but she never views him as weird for it, even though it's a relationship that would be considered taboo. Her and her friends are also kind and inviting to Shaoran despite him being a foreigner. These aren't things you'd expect to see in Japan in the 90s, but that's because we're seeing things from Sakura's point of view. We're seeing a world that's more innocent, a world where bad people are simply misunderstood and can be turned into friends. You know, like how Sakura has to defeat the Clocards, but by doing so they become her allies.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
It may not seem realistic, but Clamp has said that with Sakura they wanted to create, quote, something minorities would feel comfortable with. And I think part of that was allowing Rika to live out this fantasy in a safe environment. Love is a core theme of Sakura, and it makes sense that Clamp would want to portray every form of love, whether it be love between family members, love between peers, same-sex love, unrequited love, and the love a young girl feels towards their older mentor. The last example may sound weirdly specific, but it's an incredibly common trope in Japanese fiction, especially romance stories, and I think minimalizing all of that down to problematic, yuck, kind of ignores the authorial intent. One of the downsides to Sakura getting overlooked in the West is that we don't really talk about how much impact it had on otaku culture. The moe style of the early 2000s is such an obvious attempt to capture the look of Sakura, and yet it simply can't even compare. Ask yourselves, are you the virgin Uguer or the Chad Hoer? One of my favorite things to come from Sakura's impact on otaku culture actually has to do with otaku tape trading. Sakura was very popular in Japanese tape trading circles, and this would lead to what was known at the time as the greatest controversy in anime broadcasting, an incident known as Musashimaru's tragedy, or as some have dubbed it, Cardcaptor Sakura Sumo Card Edition. Sakura aired on Tuesdays at 6 p.m., and while this wasn't a particularly difficult time slot for fans to tune in, young people in Japan have considerably less free time and abide by tight daily schedules. This is another reason why videotaping anime was so popular. If you had other commitments, you could set a timer on your VCR and record the show to watch back whenever you wanted. Sakura's final episode was highly anticipated by fans who wanted to know if Sakura would tell Shaoran she loved him. This anticipation was fanned even further by the fact that the anime was going to be coming to an end before the manga. On March 21st, 2000, many Sakura fans hit play on their VCR, expecting to be greeted by the words, "I am a dreamer, Hisamu power." But instead, they see a sumo match. It's the tail end of the Grand Sumo Spring Tournament, and wrestler Taka no Nami is facing off against the favorite to win, Yokozuna Musashimaru. After only a few seconds, a winner emerges. Musashimaru loses the bout. After 4 minutes, the Sakura episode begins.
I am a dreamer, Hisamu power.
As the final scene begins, we see Shaoran at the airport, about to board the plane to Hong Kong. Then, we see Sakura running through the airport, calling out his name. Finally, just as they meet, for everyone who had their VCR set to record from 6 p.m. to 6:30, the VCR recorded the correct time, cutting off the episode 4 minutes too soon. It's the year 2000. There's no website to rewatch the episode. There's no physical release. The manga doesn't come out for another month. A collective Hoei was heard throughout Japan that night. Fans take to message boards where they hear secondhand accounts of what happened, though it will be some time before they can see it for themselves. They learn that Sakura didn't tell Shaoran she loved him, as that was being saved for the end of the second Cardcaptor Sakura film. Regardless, they are not happy. Some begin to speculate that a supernatural force is at work, that the spirit of Musashimaru had cursed Sakura and its fans. The Cardcaptor's localization, the low quality of the Animax dub, the rampant misinterpretation of the series themes. He did this. The tragedy of Musashimaru would stand as the most controversial event in anime broadcasting for a few years, only to be dethroned by Haruhi Suzumiya's Endless 8 several years later. But Sakura fans, much like elephants, never forget. Oh yeah, also, like, spoiler warning, I talk a lot about Sakura in this video.